Picture a backyard, somebody's birthday, late summer, paper plates, a folding table, the smell of a grill that's been in service for 30 years. And everywhere you look, phones, up in the air, recording the candles, recording the cake, recording each other recording the cake. And then there's him, standing off to the side, plate in one hand, not filming, not posting, not narrating the moment for an audience that isn't even there, just living it. He's the one person at this party whose night will leave no trace, no story, no reel, no look where I am. By tomorrow, as far as the internet is concerned, this evening never happened. And here's the strange part. In the world we've built, he's the one who looks odd. The man who simply showed up and was present, somehow, he's the weird one now. We have arrived at a place where not showing strangers your life is treated as suspicious. So what's actually going on in the mind of the Gen X man who refuses to post his life online? Is he hiding something? Is he insecure? Is he lonely? Or has he quietly figured out something the rest of us are only now starting to suspect? That's what we're getting into today. And I'm going to do something most videos on this topic don't bother to do. I'm going to back it up with the actual psychology, real research, real names, because you deserve more than some stranger on the internet guessing about you. And stick around to the end because there's a twist. It turns out there are two completely different men who both refuse to post, and from the outside, they look identical. But on the inside, they're opposites. One of them has found peace, the other one is hiding. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly which one you're looking at. Now here's the thing, if you actually walked up to that man at the barbecue and asked him why he doesn't post, you wouldn't get a TED Talk about privacy and autonomy. You'd get a shrug. I don't know, my life's kind of boring. I just don't really care about that stuff. Which is funny, because underneath that shrug is one of the more quietly radical positions a person can hold right now. He doesn't see it as a big deal. So let's unpack why it actually is. Start with the thing he noticed, because he did notice. He was there for the whole thing. The Gen X man remembers when all of this began. He was already an adult when the first social networks showed up. He didn't grow up inside them the way younger people did. He watched them get built. And in the beginning, it actually made sense. It was simple. You had a page, you put up a few photos, and your friends, your actual friends, people you knew, could see what you were up to. It was sharing with people who cared about you. And then somewhere along the way it changed, quietly. The friends became followers. The followers became strangers. And the whole thing stopped being about sharing and started being about showing off. As one person put it in a comment that thousands of people agreed with, it used to be about sharing with friends. Now it's about performing for strangers. That's the shift he clocked. The share button had quietly turned into a stage. And this isn't just a feeling. There's a name for it, and it goes back long before the internet. In 1959, a sociologist named Erving Goffman wrote a book called The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. His argument was simple and kind of haunting. Most of social life is a performance. We're all actors managing how we appear, putting on a face depending on who's watching. Goffman was talking about ordinary, face-to-face life. Then social media came along and put that performance on a permanent stage in front of an audience of thousands, where every show gets recorded forever. And the Gen X man looked at that stage and just declined to get on it. His logic is almost annoyingly simple. If he wants his friends to see a photo, he sends it to them directly. That's it. He doesn't need to broadcast it to 400 strangers just to get a picture in front of the 3 people who'd actually care. The performance to him is unnecessary work, a tax, and he decided a long time ago he wasn't going to pay it. Here's the second piece, and it's the part that people who post constantly genuinely cannot understand. For the Gen X man, the silence isn't a sacrifice. The silence is the reward. There's a specific kind of peace that comes from knowing nobody knows what you're up to. No audience tracking your week. No invisible jury rating your vacation. No quiet pressure to turn a nice afternoon into content. As one man described it, and again thousands of people agreed, there is something genuinely calming about no one knowing what you're doing. Think about what that actually frees up. When you don't post, you never have to wonder if you posted the right thing. You never compare your ordinary Tuesday to somebody else's highlight reel. You never quietly check back to see how the moment performed. The moment just was what it was. You were there. That's the whole transaction. Let people wonder. And if you want to understand where this comes from in Gen X specifically, go back to the childhood. This was the Latchkey generation, the first generation in real numbers to come home to an empty house. Hours every day with no adult watching, no one documenting them, no one optimizing their afternoon. Researchers actually have a name for the effect of all that unwatched time. They call it the privacy effect. When a kid spends a lot of time unobserved, they tend to build a stronger internal sense of who they are. Their compass points inward, not outward. So this is a generation that learned, very young, how to exist without an audience. They didn't just tolerate being unwatched, they were formed by it. They got comfortable being the only witness to their own lives. And then the world demanded that everyone perform, constantly, and the Gen X man was the one guy in the room who'd already spent his entire childhood learning he didn't need the camera on. Now, if that's starting to sound like I'm describing some kind of enlightened monk, hang on, because not everyone who goes quiet is at peace. We'll get to the man who isn't. But first, there's a deeper reason he doesn't post, and it comes down to one word that's quietly running most of the internet: validation. This might be the most important piece of the whole thing. The Gen X man who refuses to post does not need strangers to confirm that he exists. That sentence sounds obvious until you realize that for an enormous number of people, the opposite is quietly true. A lot of modern posting runs on a simple engine. I post, therefore people respond, therefore I feel real. The likes are oxygen, the comments are proof. And when a post does badly, when nobody reacts, there's a small, real sting of, did that even count? The Gen X man doesn't run on that engine. As one person said, and almost 9,000 people agreed, I don't need strangers to validate my existence. Or, even cleaner, they don't need to announce their life to feel good about it. And here is where the real research lives, because this isn't him being cold or antisocial. It's a recognized psychological pattern. In psychology, there's a framework called self-determination theory, and one of its core ideas is that human beings have a deep need for autonomy, the sense that your choices are your own, not dictated by outside pressure. To a man wired this way, social media doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like the opposite. It feels like a stage where your worth gets decided by a scoreboard you don't control. Posting for him isn't self-expression. It's handing the steering wheel to strangers. So he doesn't. Psychologists also draw a line between two kinds of self-awareness. There's public self-consciousness, how much you focus on how others see you, and private self-consciousness, how much you reflect on your own inner thoughts and values. People who don't post tend to live on the private side. They're not checking the mirror the crowd is holding up. They've got their own. And here's the one your other videos leave out, the name a few of you actually brought up yourselves. Turkle, a clinical psychologist at MIT who studied our relationship with technology for decades, makes a sharp point. She argues that what we put on social media was never really us in the first place. It's a curated list of who we want to appear to be. And she warns that the more we lean on that performance, the more we can actually lose touch with our own sense of self. Sit with that for a second. The thing everyone's so busy broadcasting isn't even the real them. It's the highlight reel of a person. And the research lines up. Studies on something called self-concept clarity find that it's authenticity, not a polished online image, that actually gives a person a stable, solid sense of who they are. So when the Gen X man stays quiet, he's not missing out on building an identity. He may be protecting the one he already has. There's a harder edge to this too, because it isn't all serenity and self-knowledge. Part of it is pure, hard-earned strategy. The Gen X man tends to believe something that sounds almost paranoid, right up until you've lived long enough to watch it come true. Privacy is power. What people can't see, they can't use against you. What they don't know, they can't ruin. He's watched it happen. He's watched people get fired over an old post. He's watched a careless photo follow somebody for years. He's watched relationships end and stalkers show up and reputations get torched, all over things people volunteered for free to an audience that was never on their side. And he's noticed the one rule nobody can repeal. Once it's out there forever. You can delete the post. You can't delete the screenshot. So he keeps his cards close, not because he's done anything wrong, but because he understands that the man with no public file simply has less that can be turned against him. And yes, the world does punish this. This is real, and a lot of you have lived it. There are stories of people getting passed over for a job because a recruiter couldn't find them online. Couldn't, in their words, verify their existence. Think about how upside down that is. A man treated as suspicious not for what he posted, but for what he refused to post. For a Gen X man, a generation that was already skeptical of institutions, already allergic to being managed and monitored, that's not a red flag about him. That's a red flag about them. The less the world can pull on a string it doesn't have, the better. There's a line going around, usually credited to the artist Banksy, that captures the whole instinct. Invisibility is a superpower. So let's take stock. We've got a man who watched sharing turn into performing and stepped off the stage, who finds genuine peace in not being watched, who doesn't need strangers to tell him he exists, and who treats his privacy like armor. That's a pretty flattering picture, isn't it? And that's exactly where I have to stop and be honest with you. Because if I left it there, I'd be doing what every other video on this topic does. I'd be flattering you, and you'd be right not to trust it. Here's the twist I promised. Not everyone who refuses to post is at peace. There are actually two completely different men who behave in the exact same way, and from the outside, you cannot tell them apart. Both are quiet. Both are off the grid. Both, if you ask, will give you that same shrug. I just don't care about that stuff. But inside, they are opposites. The first man, the one we've been describing, opts out from a place of security. He's quiet because he's full, not because he's empty. He's got a life he's living, people he loves, a self he's comfortable with, and he just doesn't feel the need to perform any of it. His silence is confidence. The second man looks identical, but his silence isn't peace, it's a hiding place. He's not private, he's afraid. He's not mysterious, he's just unseen, and it's starting to ache. Maybe he doesn't post because deep down, he doesn't think his life would measure up. Maybe he avoids being known because being known feels dangerous. Some people were brave enough to admit this in the comments, that they stay invisible because they're insecure, or because somewhere along the way, the walls went up and never came back down. One person described a friend exactly like that. Never posts, never shows up in a photo, and is, in their words, the most insecure person they know. And we should be honest about the cost because it's real. A few people quietly said the hard part out loud, that going silent cost them friendships, that at some point, no one knows what I'm up to, tipped over into, no one reaches out anymore. And the piece started to feel a lot like being a hermit in a shell. The old psychologist Carl Jung had language for this. He talked about the persona, the mask we wear for the world, and the self, the real thing underneath. The healthy move isn't to perform the mask all day for strangers, but it isn't to wall the self off from everyone either. It's to drop the mask with the people who've earned it. So here's the real test, and it's worth being honest with yourself about it. When you choose not to post, Are you protecting a self you're at peace with? Or are you hiding a self you haven't made peace with yet? Same silence, two completely different men, and only you know which one you are. Now, somebody's been waiting this whole video to say it, so let me say it for you. If this guy hates social media so much, why is he watching a video on YouTube? Isn't that social media? Fair. And the answer actually matters, because it's the difference the whole thing hinges on. There's a difference between consuming and performing, between watching and broadcasting. Reading a comment section, learning something, keeping up with the world, even quietly liking a video, that's taking part. It is not putting your life on a stage. The researchers who first studied people who read everything and post nothing, in a paper literally titled "Why Lurkers Lurk," found that staying quiet online is usually a deliberate, thoughtful choice, not laziness. People watch to learn, to stay aware, and very often simply to guard their own information. And here's a number that should reframe this whole conversation. By most estimates, around 90% of people online are exactly this: watchers, not posters. The loud ones you see performing? They're a tiny minority. The silent majority is enormous. The Gen X man isn't the weird exception. He's just the part of the iceberg you can't see. And one more thing, because it matters and it's fair. The Gen X man who refuses to post is not anti-people. This isn't a man who cut everyone off. He'll send you the photo directly. He's in the family group chat. He keeps up with the people he's chosen, the ones who moved overseas, the old friends, the ones who matter. He shares plenty. He just shares it with people, not with an audience. He's not against connection. He's against the stage. There's a world of difference between those two things, and that difference is the whole point. So what's it actually like over there, on the other side of the choice? Because thousands of people who walked away have described it, and they all say a version of the same thing. They talk about deleting it years ago, 5 years, 8 years, and calling it one of the best decisions they ever made. They describe a quiet that turned out to be relief. The mental noise dropped. The comparison stopped. That low, constant hum of what is everyone else doing just switched off. One person said they disappeared for 3 months, and everyone assumed something was wrong. But in that silence, they started a business, got their health back, got their sleep back, and came out the other side a different person. Nobody saw it happen. That was the point. There's a phrase for this that kept coming up, and it's a good one: doing instead of posting. While one person is filming the trip, another one is on the trip. While one is announcing the goal, another is quietly hitting it. And there's an old, stubborn Gen X wisdom buried in there, the same instinct that built this entire generation. You don't talk about it. You don't broadcast it. You just go do the thing. Disappear and come back better. Or, as one person put it in 5 words that honestly belong on a wall somewhere, I don't post my life, I live it. That's the trade. You give up the audience, you get back your life, the unedited, unwatched, unperformed version of it. And it turns out a lot of people who make that trade never want to go back. So let's come back to that backyard, to the man standing off to the side, plate in hand, not filming the candles. He's not broken, he's not antisocial, he's not hiding a body in the basement, despite what the comments under these videos always seem to joke about. He's just a man who made a quiet decision a long time ago, that his life was his to live, not his to perform. And the rest of the world is only now, slowly, starting to wonder if he was onto something. But remember the twist, because there were 2 of him. And the most useful thing you can take from this video isn't a label for other people. It's an honest question for yourself. If you don't post your life, why not? Is it because you're genuinely at peace, full, secure, present, with nothing to prove? That's the first man, and there's a real kind of freedom there. Or is the silence a wall you've been hiding behind, and somewhere under it is a self you've been avoiding? and maybe a little loneliness you've never said out loud. That's the second man. And if that's you, the answer was never to start performing for strangers. It's to drop the mask with the few people who have earned the real you. Privacy isn't the problem, hiding is. There's a line that says it better than I can. Choose peace over performance. The Gen X man figured that out decades ago. The only question worth asking is whether you've chosen peace or whether you've just gone quiet. Irony I'll leave you with. If you're the first man, the one at peace, you don't need to tell anyone. You don't owe the world an update. But I'm curious anyway. So if this hit a little too close to home, you don't have to post it anywhere. You can just tell me down in the comments which of the two men you are. Speak when it adds value, and maybe this is one of those times. Take care of yourself and enjoy the quiet.